London, April 2015. The city's quiet during the Easter bank holiday weekend. But in the heart of the Hatton Garden district, something extraordinary had just happened. A gang of 6 old thieves in their 60s had just escaped Hatton Garden's safe deposit with over £14 million worth of gold and jewelry. No force, no guns, and no noise. Just pure planning and execution. What took 3 years to plan was executed in 81 minutes, making these 6 grandpas the most successful burglars in British legal history. But after only 6 weeks, police had rounded up 5 of the 6 thieves. But still, only a portion of the stolen loot had been recovered, leaving the leader of the crew on the loose. They called him the Ghost, the mastermind of it all. What happened next was so crazy that it inspired numerous Hollywood productions. How did a bunch of grandpas pull off an almost perfect heist? How did they get caught? Was it a slip-up, a betrayal, or just bad luck? And where's the rest of the unrecovered loot? This is the story of the Hatton Garden heist. Michael John Seed is the son of a Cambridge academic. He lives in the northern end of Liverpool Road in North London. He's 71 years old, lives off the grid with no job, no visible means of income, and no phone. He keeps to himself, pays for everything in cash, and refuses to feed the pigeons. He got a degree in electronics at Nottingham University and became an expert early on in his life. After university, in 1984, he was jailed for 3 years for dealing LSD. His only previous criminal conviction. From then on, he made a promise to himself to stay off the radar, but he never intended on leaving the black economy. Up until 1990, Seed had made a modest living fixing TVs and computers before turning to the recycling of jewelry and precious metals. Although he was making decent income from his jewelry recycling operation, Michael was still not happy with his current situation. He needs to find a way to scale things up. One night, in his small, electronics-packed apartment, he starts thinking about how he could finesse the system. A long list of ideas leads him to something: robbing the Hatton Garden safe deposit. On one of his weekly heavy drinking sessions at a local Wetherspoons pub, he meets an interesting character, Brian Reader, also known as the Governor, one of the busiest crooks in the British underworld. One night, he jokingly mentions how using his electronics expertise, he could get himself into the Hatton Garden safe deposit. Brian Reader laughed it off, but deep down, he knew Michael wasn't joking. The following week, Reader brings it up again. This time, the two are serious. They exchange what they know about the building. A few beers later, they're both in. But they can't do it by themselves. They need a team, and not any team. Brian the Governor doesn't look far. From the same pub, he recruits 60-year-old career criminal Danny Jones. He adds 65-year-old Terrence Perkins to the mix, another criminal who had taken part in a raid on the Security Express depot in East London in 1983. The third person he recruits is 60-year-old William Lincoln. And finally, 74-year-old John Kenny Collins, who would serve as the driver and the lookout in the operation. 6 old criminals with one single goal. The crew is assembled. With limited physical ability, they needed to rely heavily on their criminal minds. It was time to come up with the perfect plan. Just like Seed and his crew, scammers and shady companies online are waiting for the perfect opportunity to invade your privacy, steal your data, and put you and your loved one's safety at risk. That's why a trusted, reliable VPN is mandatory for a safe, enjoyable internet experience. That's when CyberGhost comes into play. With CyberGhost, you can bypass geo-restrictions and stream freely, knowing your data is encrypted and protected. With over 100 virtual locations, you can watch and access your favorite shows and services from anywhere in the world. With over 38 million users worldwide, CyberGhost is one of the most trusted VPN providers on the market. To use the VPN, all you need to do is connect to a server by clicking this big button. It finds the closest and fastest server for you. Alternatively, you can scroll through their list of locations and pick the one you want your virtual location to be. The app works similarly, no matter what operating system you're using it on. We've teamed up with CyberGhost to give you 83% off. All you have to do is scan this QR code or click the first link in the description. You'll also get 4 months for free. Thank you, CyberGhost, for sponsoring this video. Planning the job at Hatton Garden began in perhaps the most British way possible, meeting in a local pub on Friday nights. During the week, each member of the crew did his own research, asking people who worked at similar places, making deposits of their own, and finding as much as they could about the building's architecture and daily security measures. Every Friday night, they'd share notes and highlight potential weaknesses. A few months later, the plan started to take shape. They had found out that the building's alarm system's records indicated a history of frequent false alarm activations. For them, this was a good sign. This meant that most likely security personnel had become desensitized to it. They'd also found out that the vault contained high security areas that could not be monitored by CCTV or physically checked. The interior of the safe deposit boxes themselves only had one camera that could easily be dealt with. On top of that, the vault wasn't even guarded at nighttime, nor on the weekends. The crew had too many blind spots to exploit. After extensive planning, where everyone had been assigned their role, all that is left now is to wait for the perfect opportunity. 3 years after they started planning, the crew decided to get the job done over the Easter weekend in April 2015. Everyone's on board. It was time to execute. It's the evening of the heist. The crew are in a North London warehouse preparing to hit the road. They go over the plan one last time and split up. Danny Jones and Terry Perkins headed out on foot. Kenny Collins, William Lincoln, and Michael C. Basil took Collins' white Mercedes van. Brian Reeder used someone else's Freedom Pass to travel on bus into central London. The way in was through the fire escape round the corner next to number 38. Basil took out keys and was first in through the main door to the building. The crew carried their gear down the fire escape to the basement courtyard from the inside. Basil unbolted the back door, and 2 men climbed the stairs to the second floor, where they brought up and disabled the elevator from the first floor. They crawled out, opened the unlocked cupboard under the stairs, and disabled the alarm. One of the gang dropped down the elevator shaft to the basement and forced open a metal shutter. They cut the power to the outer iron gate and slid it open, then smashed the lock off the wooden main door and let in the others. They cut through the second iron gate, then used a diamond-tipped drill to breach the concrete of the vault. 3 holes were made. The entrance is just wide enough for Danny Jones and Basil to fit through. The two would then empty 44 deposit boxes, holding cash, jewelry, and gold. 14 million pounds was in their hands. They go out the same way they got in. They split up in London streets. The 6 old guys had just made history. It was time for the harder part of the job, not getting caught. The discovery sent shockwaves. Headlines screamed about the audacity and the sheer scale of the 14 million pound stolen loot.
The Metropolitan Police, Scotland Yard in other words, they say they're investigating a robbery.
The scene still remains chaotic down there. The vault is covered in dust and debris, and the floor is strewn with discarded safety deposit boxes, numerous power tools.
We've got clients' rings that are sat in there. Half the people there have got their own personal effects along with clients' effects, so that's like a double whammy.
The public romanticized the heist, some comparing it to Ocean's 11 or a Guy Ritchie film. Press coverage was even described as affectionate. Authorities immediately launched a massive investigation, going through hours of footage and forensic clues. The police offered a £20,000 reward for anyone who would come forward with one of the thieves' locations. The police began testing the scene for DNA traces, fingerprints, or footprints left in the dust and rubble. However, in this case, there were very few hard clues left at the scene. London Metropolitan Police ultimately were able to use advanced surveillance technology to find out an extremely powerful clue. Authorities had footage from one remaining camera the gang had missed above a fire exit. Also, the gang did not take into account the surveillance footage collected on the streets surrounding the building. Authorities identified a white Mercedes circling around the area before the heist, a car owned by Kenny Collins. Police tracked the car and installed a bug in it. Unsuspecting, the men boasted about the heist, the loot, and even complained about other gang members. Authorities also found out about meetups at the pub where the heist was planned, still occurring to discuss the potential of one last job. At the meetings, police had hidden cameras and lip readers in place. On May 19, 2015, about a month and a half after the heist, authorities had their shot to catch almost all of the criminals red-handed. The gang had planned to transfer about £4 million worth of stolen goods between two of their cars. They did not know that the police were watching and recording nearby. The second the exchange went down, they were able to arrest 4 suspects at the scene. 4 down, 2 to go. The exceptions were Michael Seed Basil and Brian Reeder. Authorities knew Brian Reeder was the 5th guy in the crew. They just had to figure out his hideout location. They analyzed the suspect's computers. Search history revealed that as early as April 2012, members had been looking up drills. By May 2014, the web search had narrowed to information on the specific drill used in the heist, as well as YouTube clips on how to use it. Brian Reeder was arrested on May 19, 2015. At the time, he was 76 years old. Authorities had all of the puzzle pieces put together, except for the identity of the mysterious Basil. Basil had been living off-grid his entire adult life. He had no phone records to prove his involvement in the heist. His accomplices refused to disclose his identity, but in reality, they'd already did. Authorities came back to years of surveillance footage of each one of the thieves. After Kenny Collins was identified, police watched him meet with many people. Each one was identified and discounted. However, one individual could not be eliminated. On the 17th of April, he met a man in Shoreditch Park. Then on the 24th, he met the same man again. They kept surveillance on him for several years. In March 2018, he was caught dismantling 1,000 items of gold and jewelry stolen in the heist. In his possession were over £1 million of stolen valuables. All in all, 10 people were convicted in connection with the conspiracy to burgle the Hatton Garden security vault. Brian Reeder, John Kenny Collins, Daniel Jones, and Terry Perkins pled guilty and were convicted of conspiracy to commit burglary. Perkins died in jail in February 2018. Collins and Reeder had been set free in 2019, and Reeder was found too unwell to ever return. In 2023, he died at 84 without ever returning his share of the loot. In 2019, Michael Seed was convicted for his role in the heist. Because he pleaded not guilty, he was sent to jail for 10 years. To this day, more than £5 million worth of jewelry has never been recovered. Some of you have been emailing us about how we produce these videos. Instead of replying one by one, we thought we would make a small guide on the basics of YouTube content creation. If you're interested in becoming a YouTuber, whether a personal channel or a faceless one, we made a document to help you understand a few key points before you actually invest in YouTube. Click the link in the description. It's completely free. Subscribe and we'll see you on the next one.